nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, hello there, nature nuts. Fall is upon us. It's time to go into the forests, and today our subject is going to be mushrooms. Now, I usually like to focus on some sort of animal group, something that moves around, something that has a bit of personality. But mushrooms, even if they don't have personality, they look like they should have personality. Mushrooms are kinda cute. Mushrooms are very interesting. For example, did you know that the forests around us, trees and shrubs, they couldn't really survive without mushrooms? The interesting thing about mushrooms is that they are part of a fungus, and most of the fungus is hidden underground or inside wood or something like that. And the mushroom is actually the part of the fungus that makes spores. Spores are like seeds. They produce more fungus, more fungi, I should say. Fungi is the plural of fungus. Many fungi, they coat the roots of trees and shrubs. Mycelium is what it's called. And then the tree and the shrub, they get some of their food from the fungus. The fungus gets some of its food from the roots of the trees and the shrubs. And together they produce great, beautiful, healthy forests. Mushrooms are also interesting in the sense that many of them are edible and good to eat. And mushroom people find that very appealing. Of course, other mushrooms are deadly poisonous and they'll kill you. And of course, there's some that are halfway in between. But before you decide which ones to eat, of course, you have to identify them. So why don't we start with the process of mushroom identification?
Some mushrooms are so strong they can push their way up through asphalt driveways.
Now, the trick with mushroom identification, the first thing you need a good book. I don't want to give the impression that you can just watch this program and go out and identify mushrooms. It's actually more difficult than that, especially if you plan to eat them. So find yourself a good mushroom field guide that will work for your area. I use this one, Mushrooms of Northwest North America by Helen M.E. Shalquick Berenson. And the reason I find this book very handy is that the illustrations, they're beautiful illustrations, paintings. They were painted by the author, and many of them were painted from life, as they say, right around my hometown of Edmonton. So for me, this book works very well. You may find that for your area, there's another book that works well for you. Once you've got a good field guide, make sure that the descriptions in the field guide match the mushrooms you're looking at perfectly. Every character has to fit, especially if you plan to eat the mushrooms. So you have to be a very good observer of mushroom features. Some of them are easy, like this one here. Well, what can you say? It just looks like blobs of pink bubble gum stuck on a log. There's not much to it, not much more you can say. Pink, bubbly looking. That's all. But most of them have a little bit more complexity than that. Like these ones down here, they have a cap on the top, and then below the cap, on the underside of the cap, there are gills, which is where the spores come out, the microscopic little spores. They're not gills like a fish's gills, they just look like a fish's gills. They don't help the mushroom to breathe, they're just the place where the spores happen. And then the whole cap is attached to a stalk, and you'll want to notice the shape and the color of the stalk, whether it has any rings around it, any scales on it, the shape of the base of the stalk where it attaches to the log or into the ground. It's all important to identifying the mushrooms. And you'll also want to take with you a little mirror into the field. This is a dental mirror, that kind of thing. It's very handy because, of course, you don't have to pick a mushroom in order to identify it, and you can use this mirror to examine features like, well, if we look at this one here, get the mirror down there, and there you can see the gills. Perfectly normal looking mushroom gills, kind of a purplish gray. If you look at this one, it doesn't have any gills at all. It just has a bunch of small pores in the underside of that mushroom, and that will be an important characteristic for identifying it. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to talk about specifics. I just want to talk about the general process of identifying mushrooms, which is a lot of fun. But remember, be picky. Make sure every feature fits before you confirm your identification. Now, when you read your mushroom field guide, one of the things you'll notice is they want to know what color the spores are in the mushroom you want to identify. And in order to determine that, you don't just look at the color of the gills, because the gills are often a different color from the spores themselves. And of course, the spores are microscopic. So what you need to do is you need to make what's called a spore print, and that's a lot of fun, and it's easy to do. What you need is your mushroom, you need a piece of white paper, and you need some scissors, and you need a small vial or a bowl or something like that. First thing you do is you cut the stem off the cap of the mushroom. Okay, and then you just place the cap with the gill side down on a nice piece of white paper, and then put something over top of it to protect it from air currents. And then we just leave it for a couple of hours, because that's how long it takes for the spores to fall out of the gills and form the spore print. But I will show you one that I made the other day. There's a beauty from the same sort of mushroom with very obvious coal black spores. I mean, they look like charcoal on the paper. There's one beside it made from yellow spores. You may not be able to see that on television. It's actually quite faint. That's why you use white paper, so you can tell the difference between pale yellow and pale pink spores and so on and so forth. And you know, they're quite pretty. Some of them are very artistic. You know, you could even frame them up, hang them on the wall. Isn't that nice? Yeah, one minute it's a nature show, and the next it's a home decorating show. And who knows? Maybe it'll be a cooking show next. Why not?
Here's some good advice. Avoid eating mushrooms with white gills and a cup around the base of the stalk.
Okay, well, I've always wanted to be a TV cook, and I guess this is my opportunity. Got some shaggy mane mushrooms here. It's a very common mushroom, at least where I live, in lawns and disturbed places, and it's an easy one to recognize, so I feel comfortable cooking some up for us. See, it's a fairly tall mushroom. It has a scaly look to the outside of the cap, and it's very white, although when they get older, there's an enzyme that just dissolves the entire cap of the mushroom, and it turns into this horrible, gloopy, black, inky mess. But all we're gonna do here is cook them up. So let's get the stove pumped up here, and away we go. And I'm going to fry these mushrooms, cut them up, and fry them in real butter. Because it's a treat, you might as well use real butter. It takes a long time to fry them, and they fry down to almost nothing. And then we'll serve them up on toast, and it'll be beautiful. Now, you might wonder if I was worried at all about pesticides or herbicides in the lawn, and the truth is, I was a bit worried about that. But this is wild mushroom eating. It's not federally inspected produce. You eat wild mushrooms, you take wild chances. That smells good. It smells really good. And remember, the longer you cook them, the better. You know, get them nice and crispy. Beautiful. Beautiful. Very mushroomy. Almost kind of a beery flavor. Delightful. You gotta try this. But remember, only do it if you know exactly what sort of mushroom, you know exactly how to cook it. There are no doubts whatsoever, and you have no worries about what might happen to it. Now these are puffballs. And puffballs are mushrooms too. I wish they were a little bit older, because then I could squish one and you could see the spores come poofing out the little hole in the top of the puffball. But they're not quite old enough to do that yet. They don't have the hole yet, and they're probably all sort of brown and mushy inside. When they're young, they are white inside, and you know, you can eat them, and they're quite tasty. But if you do that, make sure to cut them in half first, and I'll show you why. Here we have a diagram of a cross section of a puffball, and it's solid white all the way through. Here's a diagram of a cross section of a young poisonous mushroom, which might look like a puffball from the outside, but inside you can see the stalk, the cap, and the gills, and you don't want to eat that. You want to throw it away. You want to wash your knife and wash your hands and all that sort of thing. Of course, you don't have to eat puffballs just because you can eat puffballs. They're beautiful to look at. There are many different sorts. The largest is the giant puffball, and the biggest giant puffball on record when it was first discovered was mistaken for a sheep. How's that for a big puffball?
The world's largest living thing is an underground fungus network bigger than a redwood tree or a blue whale.
Well, you know, I was having trouble coming up with an inspiration for a song for this mushroom show until I remembered the booble-neugum. It's a mushroom-shaped thing that I made up when I was but a mere child. It knows all the answers to our questions. All you have to do is find it so you can ask. Wouldn't that be nice if there was a booble-neugum? Booble-neugum. That's how you pronounce it. Booble-neugum. That's a goofy idea. Let's roll the song anyway.
Booble-neugum, you look so wise. Booble-neugum, an oracle in disguise. Booble-neugum, you mushroom head. Answer all the questions. Don't leave a single word unsaid. Wise old owls and aliens too, they got voluminous heads. Like a mushroom must be really smart, great big head like that. Head so doggone big you never wear a hat. In a dingy cave in a far-off land, up a hidden path on a mountain of sand, I see the booble-neugum in my mind's eye. A deep thinking mushroom and a mighty wise guy. Booble-neugum, you look so wise. Booble-neugum, an oracle in disguise. Oh, Booble-neugum, you mushroom head. Answer all the questions. Don't leave a single word unsaid. But to tell you the truth, mushrooms have no mind. No face, no eyes, no thoughts of any kind. Just a spore making part of a fungus underground. No matter what it looks like it cannot hear a sound. Sometimes the wisest don't say much at all. Leave us out on a limb when we're up against the wall. They know the answers here inside. Make us think for ourselves, encourage us to try. Booble, you look so wise. Booble, an oracle in disguise. Booble, you mushroom head. Answer all the questions. Don't leave a single word.
Mushroom photography is a lot of fun. You don't have to eat mushrooms to enjoy them. You can always take pictures of them. So you need a stable, steady place to put your camera. If these mushrooms were on a flat piece of the forest floor, I could take my sandbag, just put the sandbag down, nestle the camera on the sandbag, and then you'd have a nice steady place to take the picture from. But they're not. The sandbag won't stay on that hillside, so we'll just put it up there. Now here's a nifty trick. Maybe you know this, maybe you don't. You use a tripod to stabilize your camera, and with many tripods, you can take the center part right out, mount it upside down, and then you've got a nice stable place to take your picture. Now, just a moment here, you have to contort a bit. Where are they? Oh, I got them. I'll focus there. Tighten that up. Okay. Then you just find your shutter button. There we go. That should be a good picture. Of course, it will be upside down when we get it back. But you just flip it, and between the two of us, we'll never tell anyone. Now what we have here are some very disgusting looking mushrooms, and they look almost like fallen leaves. They look like they're rotting away, and I'll bet if we look with the dental mirror, we'll see that they're all chewed up in the gills too. Let's have up here. Yeah, what'd I tell you? They're all chewed up in the gills. I don't know what that little parasitic wasp is doing there, but what this reminds us of is the fact that there are lots and lots of different sorts of insects that use mushrooms for food. It's usually a combination of fly larvae, maggots of one sort or another, and lots of different species of beetles. And the larvae of the beetles. Some of them are feeding on the mushroom, and some of them are feeding on the other ones that are feeding on the mushroom. So why don't I pick one of these, and we'll try to shake it out over this white piece of paper and see what kinds of insects are inside. Okay, well that's a start. There's a rove beetle of some sort. You've seen rove beetles before on this show. Someday we'll do a whole show about rove beetles. R-O-V-E. They rove around from mushroom to mushroom. And what else have we got in here? Let's start picking the cap apart a bit. Ooh, yes, there's definitely life in this foreign world. Here's a couple of different larvae, immature baby insects. This one here, this hairy one, the squat one, I'm not sure what sort of larva that is. Might be a fly, might be something else. But this white one with the black head, I'm pretty sure that that's some sort of a fly larva, a maggot of some kind. And oh, look at that.
know what this one is. It looks almost like the larva of a water beetle, a diving beetle, but it can't be. This is not the water. I don't know. Maybe it's a ground beetle, a carabid beetle. That's not bad. I mean, that's not bad for one mushroom. To have a little community of critters like that. The world of mushroom insects is, as I mentioned before, a fascinating one and a big topic.
You know, mushrooms are not the only way that fungi get their spores out into the world, and these things here are also the fruiting bodies of a fungus. The fungus is deep within this log. You can't see the fungus. It's in there. It's part of the decomposition process. It's breaking down the wood. And these things are called bracket fungi. You'll see that the underside is kind of spongy looking, and that there are lots and lots and lots of tiny little holes, tiny little pores in the underside surface, and the spores come out of those little pores. A great big bracket fungus in the prime of its existence apparently can produce something like 30 million spores in a single day, which gives you some idea of what the odds are for one of those spores to actually, grow into a new fungus. Not very good. You can tell that these ones grew on this tree after it fell over because the bottom part is facing down. It's not just a matter of it growing on the cut surface, that's obvious, but the bottom part is facing down. If they grew on the tree while it was alive, like many of the trees around here have bracket fungi on them, then the bottom part would be facing either this way or this way, depending on which way the bottom of the tree was when the tree was standing up. So there you go, bracket fungi. They're kind of like mushrooms, but not really.
Most fungi are either decomposers or partners with trees and shrubs or parasites.
Well, I guess that's all the time we have for mushrooms, but I have one more topic to discuss with you before we go. Sometimes you're out in the woods and you find plucked mushrooms sitting up in the branches of trees. What's going on? Not many animals eat mushrooms, but the fact is some squirrels, like the red squirrels that live around here, they'll take mushrooms up into trees, dry them, and then store them and eat them later. It's a weird fact of nature. I love weird facts of nature. That's why I'm a nature nut, and I hope you are too. Bye for now.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.